I'm Teresa Strong, the Director of Research Programs at FPWR. I'm very excited to tell you about our new research grants. I wanted to acknowledge Jessica Bohanowicz, who's the Associate Director of Research Programs, who spends a lot of her time managing and keeping track of all our grants and grantees. And always an opportunity to throw up a picture of the reason that I'm so passionate about PWS, which is Daniel, my son, shown at the top shortly after he came home from the hospital. And at the bottom last year, after I think we hiked to see the largest cedar in the world in Olympic National Park. So that was very exciting. So I'm excited today to tell you about our research. There we go, sorry. And I'll start with FPWR's mission. So our mission is to eliminate the challenges of PWS through the advancement of research. And we do this by supporting a broad portfolio of high impact research. And we do this across the research spectrum. So from real bench research and discovery all the way through to clinical care. And we do this in two ways. One, through a directed research program in which we're identifying those areas that need support and we need to generate critical information or resources, and those are directly managed by our research team, which the whole team is shown on the right. And then what we'll focus on today is the grant program, which are the grants that come or proposals that come from experts in the field where they're bringing their best ideas to us. We review them and choose through a competitive grant process the ones to support. So I'll encourage you to take a look on our website at FPWR's 5-year research plan. I won't be going into depth about it today, but we'll have a future webinar to go through it in some depth. But we did take the time to look at the landscape of PWS research and assess where FPWR can make the biggest impact. And as I said, we have directed research programs, which are shown in blue, research tools and resources that can be used by many investigators, shown in green, and the grant program, which we'll focus on today. If we take those directed research programs and tools and show them across the research spectrum, all the way from discovery and drug development through drug evaluation and use in clinical care, you can see where some of those directed programs fit. And again, that will be the subject of another webinar later on in the year. Today, we're going to focus on our grant program, and the purpose of our grant program is really to support the most innovative research that we can, the exceptional opportunities, and these opportunities really come across the entire research spectrum. So rather than the targeted approach of our directed program, this is just really looking for the best opportunities for our research dollars. The goals of our investigator-initiated grant program are then to support early stage, highly innovative, sometimes higher risk, but potentially higher reward research using a competitive program. And we select the grants based on a collaborative input of scientists to review the scientific merit of each proposal. And also we have parent advocate reviewers for each of the proposals. And that's to ensure that the research that we're supporting is research that's important to our community. We support research that aligns with our priorities of advancing the understanding of PWS and developing more effective therapies for our kids. And this program really, one thing that it does is expand the base of our PWS researchers, so it can draw scientists who have expertise, for example, in neurobiology or in psychiatry, who have not done PWS research into the PWS field. It's also a mechanism whereby we can support promising young researchers who are just getting started out in their careers to get their wings in PWS and hopefully stay there. And it is also an opportunity to support established researchers who might have some new ideas about how to address the challenges of PWS. So the accomplishments of our grant program since its inception, and the grant program has been running since FPWR was established in 2003. We've invested more than $9 million in PWS research, and that supported more than 130 research projects in 13 countries. So a lot of research. And you know, one question that is asked, and rightfully so, is what do we get from those investments? So the FPWR supported research to date has been described in more than 125 medical publications. And this is really important. This is how scientists communicate with each other, how they communicate advances to each other, how they build on each other's research. So getting the publications and the kinds of journals that the projects are being published in are really important metrics for understanding the impact that our dollars are having. And as might be expected, reflecting the broad portfolio in our grant program, these publications have really come in many different areas. So there have been publications that are providing new insight into the function of the genes in the PWS region, a new understanding of appetite and appetite regulation in PWS, the identification of new targets for drug development, the advancement of some candidate drugs from the bench, and also some clinical studies, both clinical trials and some studies to improve clinical care in PWS. So really reflecting the entire spectrum of research in PWS. FPWR supported investigators, one of the reasons they use our grant program is to generate some data so that they can then get funding for larger studies from government agencies. And many of the investigators that we have supported have been successful in doing this. So it's really a way to leverage our investments. And there's also been many new resources, cell lines, animal models that have been developed by our investigators, which we then require, and it's what you're supposed to do anyway, to be shared among the scientific community. So when those resources are made, they are shared with others so that we're not reinventing the wheel and being inefficient. And we've also supported the development of some new drugs and targets and new insights into clinical care. This just gives you a profile of the research that we've supported through our grant program, the research category, about pretty evenly split between really in the dish in vitro work, so strictly lab bench work, animal models, and then clinical studies. Those are clinical trials or studies that involve human participants or PWS kids for clinical, advancing clinical care. You can see the number of grants that we've supported each year has really gone steadily up. 2017, we're just showing the first half of the year. We expect another group of grants in the second half of the year. And you can see around 2013, we had a really nice jump in the number of grants we were able to support. And it also reflects the number of proposals that we got. I think our first year in 2004, we had about 15 proposals submitted, and now on average we're getting probably about 80 proposals per year submitted. So it really shows that the scientific community appreciates us as a reliable source of funding and is thinking about how they can do PWS research that fits with our goals. And the research areas that we've supported, you can see, are broken down in this pie chart. It's really, again, across the board, many aspects of PWS that are important to our children. And this is obviously not meant for you to read unless you'd like to, but just shows you some of the publications that have come out in the first part of 2017 to date. These are all been supported by your funds. And if I highlight a few on the next slide, just to show you the kinds of things we're supporting, there's some really complex but really important genetics, understanding how the genes in the PWS region work. Some straight up drug development from Dr. Hoagland's group developing ghrelin inhibitors. Some studies looking at the basis of autism and how it compares in PWS to other causes of autism. imaging studies to look at how the brains of individuals with PWS function, and again, how it compares among subgroups and among between typical individuals. And finally, a study that identifies a new target for drug development. Excuse me. So those are the kinds of studies that we're supporting. We try to put those on our blog. If you're signed up for our blog, hopefully you're getting some information on the individual studies as they come out. I'll turn now to our new programs or projects that we're supporting in this round of funding. So we have identified 9 new grants to be supported, and they're shown in a list here, and I'll just be going through one by one to tell you a little bit about each of them. So we broke them down into general categories, the first of which is the development of new therapies for PWS. And there are 2 grants in this category. The first was funded in partnership with FPWR Canada and is from Mark Laland's group. And Dr. Laland is a longtime geneticist. He was actually one of the first people to describe the imprinting defect in PWS. So he has worked in PWS for a long time, and he is interested in looking at ways to reactivate the PWS region genes. So we know all individuals with PWS have those genes present. Everybody has a maternal chromosome 15, whether they're PWS by deletion or by uniparental disomy or imprinting. But those genes are silenced. And Dr. Laland's group has been doing a good bit of work trying to identify the machinery that silences those genes. And he is looking at zinc finger 274, which is a particular protein that is critical in silencing those genes. And he is looking at ways to disrupt that protein and unsilence the gene. So he's using state-of-the-art CRISPR technology to do that. And the advantage of this, FPWR is actually supporting a few projects on gene activation in parallel because each one has challenges and opportunities, and we think it's important to be advancing a few ways of trying to do this. This particular approach is important potentially because it might be very specific for turning on only the PWS region genes and not other genes throughout the genome. We're excited about this grant because it is gene activation, it's genetic therapy. What's not to like about genetic therapy? It's a very experienced research team, and it builds on some of their previous work and resources that they have developed over the last couple of years. Some of the longer term or broader contributions are that really understanding that on-off switch on how we turn genes on and off in the PWS region is going to be critical to any of our gene activation strategies. So it's really a way of laying groundwork for either this approach or other approaches for genetic therapy for PWS. And this group has been great about generating resources and methods that can be more widely used. They're big on growing organoids in a dish, brain organs, so they can look at the interaction between neurons, and all of that will be important for our research field as well. The second therapeutic grant that we're supporting is from Yossi Tam, who has been looking at the endocannabinoid system in PWS. So he did a study that was published late last year looking at the endocannabinoid system and found that the whole system is a little off in PWS. It's overactive. And with investigators at the NIH, he has been looking at a drug to target this system. And he showed last year in FPWR-supported work that this drug in a mouse model of PWS causes significant weight loss. So they're building the rationale to take this drug into clinical trials. And the first part of that is, looking at how it affects weight. So that was encouraging. This project is looking at additional aspects of the endocannabinoid system in PWS. And Dr. Tam believes that the disrupted endocannabinoid system in PWS is also contributing to poor bone health, which is just highly prevalent in PWS. And he's testing whether this drug, which we know causes weight loss in the mouse models, might also be effective in improving bone health. So that's sort of a bonus aspect of the drug, but it will also be important in advancing it to clinical studies. So we're excited about this grant because poor bone health is more than 90% of individuals with PWS have bad bone health, and we don't necessarily, it doesn't always hit the top priority on our list, but it's really important. If you're going to exercise and be active, you have to have strong bones, and having fractures and needing operations obviously is detrimental to your overall health and your ability to exercise. So the drugs that they are already looking at for weight loss might actually improve bone health as well. We also are, think this is a great young investigator. He's got an excellent team. He's put together some great collaborators, and that's encouraging to see. So the potential long-term contributions are we really don't understand why people with PWS have this poor bone health that's really consistent across the board. And so we might get at why that's happening. It can improve bone health and reduce the risk of fractures and breaks, which would be great, obviously. It may also be another feature of a drug that can be evaluated in clinical trials. And that's, anytime you can build rationale for testing a drug in people with PWS, that's a benefit. So we're looking forward to having this project completed and seeing this class of drugs move into, hopefully into PWS within the next few years. So the next general category we have is how genetics might advance understanding and treatment of PWS, and there are 3 grants that fall into this category. The first of which is one that, if you were on social media, generated quite a bit of interest because it's a really interesting finding that Dr. Godler has come up with. So FPWR is funding Dr. Godler, or funded him previously, and is actually funding him now, to develop a newborn screening test for PWS. So he's really a technology guy. He is big on developing cutting edge technology to do testing. And he's applied his technology to PWS as a way to screen babies when they're born so that we can get early diagnosis on everyone. And so that's a very important project that's progressing very nicely. But as part of that project, he's using a technology that is really, really quantitative. And he noticed that some individuals with uniparental disomy seem to have some cells that actually had 3 chromosome 15s. So if you'll bear with me in genetics for a moment, we know that all individuals who have PWS by UPD actually start out at conception as having 3 chromosome 15s. Having 3 chromosome 15s is not compatible with development, so a baby can't develop with that chromosome complement, and so they lose the paternal chromosome, and that's how you get PWS. But apparently in some individuals, not every cell has lost that extra chromosome. And so Dr. Godler found a % of individuals with UPD, it's a small %, and he's not sure of the numbers yet, that's the point of this project, who have some cells that apparently have 3 chromosome 15s. So he's going to look at the frequency of how often that happens, and also look at how that correlates with severity of symptoms in PWS. So we're excited about this because it's a researcher with expertise in genetic testing. He's discovered a new phenomenon that may explain some of the variability. We don't know yet whether it's a good thing or a bad thing to have some trisomic cells. It might be good because in those cells you have paternal expression of the genes, presumably. It might be bad because in the cells with 3 chromosome 15s, they might not work as well. So it's really not clear, but this should allow us to gain some clarity on that question. And he is working with Dr. Butler, who's an experienced PWS clinician, to look at how clinical aspects correlate with the genetics. And I think in the long term, this is going to give us answers to some questions about the spectrum of severity in PWS. it supports the continued development of the newborn screen, and it's also a technology that can be used to monitor our gene activation programs. So that will be an advantage of continuing to develop this technology as well. The second genetic project, many of you have sent baby teeth to Dr. Reiter. He uses those baby teeth to grow stem cells and develop neurons in a dish. And he's particularly interested in aspects of autism and in PWS and in other chromosome 15 disorders like duplication 15. And so he's developed a whole bank of stem cells from your kid's teeth and is doing molecular analyses to compare this. So we're interested in this project because it is looking at the underlying basis of autism. So he's looking at individuals who have autism versus those who don't with PWS and comparing it to other groups that have autism. It allows the baby teeth, and using the baby teeth allows a lot of cell lines to be made. And this is an investigator who's very active not only in PWS, but in Angelman syndrome and duplication 15 syndrome. So an understanding of how PWS neurons are different than typical neurons and how they differ between those who have autism. Sorry, we're having a tornado in the background. Hopefully I won't get blown away. Those who have autism and those who don't may lead to an understanding of what is the molecular basis of that autism, and also might allow us to develop new targets for drug development. Keep sending those teeth to Dr. Reiter. You have to have the kit ahead of time, so please, if your child is about to lose some teeth, go ahead and contact Dr. Reiter and he can send you a kit for that. The final grant in the genetics group is from Dr. Driscoll, looking at how genetic factors and biological factors may affect how effective oxytocin is in PWS. So this is a study that's going to use the samples and the data from Drs. Miller and Driscoll's recent oxytocin trial in children with PWS. And they found that some kids are responding better than others, and trying to figure out what is underlying that difference. So they'll be looking at the amount of active oxytocin levels in the blood. They'll be looking at genetic variants in the receptor, so how that oxytocin is received by the person, and examining the function of the proteins that are processing that oxytocin. And they're going to correlate that with the results of the study, really to try to get an individualized picture of how individuals with PWS respond and why. So this is a really important grant, I think, because we know so far that the oxytocin trials in PWS have been generally positive, but they've been pretty variable. And one possible explanation is that different individuals have a different response because of their receptors or because of how they process the oxytocin. So this knowledge is really needed to better understand how to optimize oxytocin therapy in PWS. And the potential long-term contributions are to really help researchers design clinical trials that are more efficient and hopefully more likely to succeed. And it could also guide the personalized treatment of oxytocin in PWS in the long term. So we have two projects that are really addressing hyperphagia in PWS. One is developing biomarkers, and another looking at a therapeutic intervention. The first is Dr. Key at Vanderbilt University, and she's developing, for anyone who's been in PWS clinical trials, the way we most typically measure that excessive appetite is by a questionnaire. And questionnaires are never, it can be a good measure, and it is, but we always want more objective measures. And so Dr. Key is going to look at that. So she's developing some techniques, an eye tracking technique, and a way of measuring brain waves when individuals with PWS look at food. And that can be a much more quantitative measure of how interested a person is in food, and that might be very useful for our clinical trials that are up and coming. So, we want to get away from or complement the caregiver reporting on hyperphagia, which can be subjective and improve the quality of the clinical trial results. This is an approach that can be used across ages and intellectual abilities. So even for individuals who don't communicate well or who are younger or don't have classic signs of hyperphagia, if they're more interested in food, it should show up in this test. And in the long term, it's really, I think, going to help us understand the onset of hyperphagia in PWS, and also can be a valuable endpoint for clinical studies. The second grant in this category is from Dr. Butler, and he's evaluating whether a non-invasive electrical brain stimulation can improve hyperphagia in PWS. So this is transcranial direct current stimulation, which is, you just put an electrode on the outside of the skull and give a very mild electrical stimulation. And many investigators are looking at this to treat things like depression and some OCD and other psychiatric disorders. And Dr. Butler is looking at whether it can be used to reduce hyperphagia in PWS. So they're going to do this treatment and then look at multiple measures of hyperphagia in people with PWS. And this is an exciting grant because it has the potential to, if it is positive, it's known to be a safe intervention, and it has the potential to be adopted fairly widely in the PWS community. They're looking at multiple measures of hyperphagia. This is a group that has a lot of experience with PWS research. So Dr. Butler is partnering with Oconomowoc group homes to do this study. So, two great groups coming together, and it's an excellent environment. So we like this because we like all potential new therapies, because it may also provide us with some new measures of efficacy and some insight into how hyperphagia develops. So our final two grants are looking at aspects of behavior and cognition and mental health in PWS, which is another really important area for our families. The first one is from Dr. Holland, who has a very long career in PWS research, has done so much in describing some of the mental health vulnerabilities for people with PWS. And a few years back, Dr. Holland started looking at vagus nerve stimulation because it was reported in typical obese people to reduce hunger and cause weight loss. What he found, he did a small study, and unfortunately they did not find weight loss. However, a couple of the participants expressed a real change in behavior, a real improvement in behavior. And so Dr. Holland has now designed a study to really look at that aspect of VNS. So they're going to determine if this VNS therapy can decrease temper outbursts and improve the challenging behavior that is associated with PWS in mainly adolescents and adults. So again, this is a potential therapy that could have a reasonably quick course into clinical acceptance if it proves to be to have efficacy. It is a potential therapy for adolescents and adults with PWS, and it will address some of the biggest problems or challenges for families and the person with PWS, which includes those temper outbursts and some of the more difficult behaviors. In addition, it really addresses, there's a polyvagal theory for those aficionados who want to look that up, or I'm happy to discuss it a little bit more, of how that system is disrupted in PWS. So it's really going to give us some insight into whether that hypothesis is correct or not. And really there's a lot of need in the mental health area of PWS, so we're excited to see some potential new therapies in that area. And the final grant we'll discuss today is from Dr. Hoff at Mount Sinai, and he is an expert in neuroanatomy. He's one of those individuals who has been outside of the PWS area, but he's been studying the neuroanatomy of autism, and so it'll be a great perspective, I think, to bring to the PWS world. And he's studying this particular set of neurons, these von Economo neurons, that are really critical for social function, and they're not present in lower animals and in mice and rats and things, but they're present in primates and humans, and they're really important for those social interactions, sensory awareness, and problem solving. And he's seen some disruptions in individuals with autism, and now we'll be looking at it in PWS. So he'll be characterizing the brain structures and looking at differences in PWS compared to other autism individuals and compared to typical individuals. So this is important because, we really don't have a lot of studies that are looking at the neuroanatomy in PWS, and this is an expert in that field and looking at this particular set of neurons that seems to be critical to some of the social function of our kids. It brings an expert in that field into PWS research, and I think we really would benefit from additional expertise in neuroanatomy and neurobiology in PWS. And it could suggest new approaches for addressing this, the socialization problems in PWS. So that's a very quick run through of all of our grants. Just what else to expect in 2017. We're continuing with our grant program. It continues to be very robust. We're currently evaluating more than 20 research projects that will be announced in the fall. So we keep having excellent interest from the research community. We're going to continue progress advancing our basic understanding of PWS and finding new targets, developing the early stage drugs. We're going to see in 2017, maybe bleeding into 2018 a little bit, the outcomes of several clinical studies that will be of a lot of interest to our community on oxytocin, carbetocin, rhythm study on setmelanotide. The results from that should be available later in the summer or in the fall. Dr. Scheinman's diet study looking at a low-carb diet and how it affects hunger and behavior. The VNS study, Dr. Holland's study. So all of those should be coming out, and some of them will probably work, some of them probably will not work. All of the information will be important for us to just, to look ahead and hone or guide us in trying to figure out what are going to be the best therapies for our kids. We're also going to see the start of a number of new clinical studies, diazoxide, CBD oil, oxytocin and carbetocin, Alizé's drug, mindfulness intervention. All of these are set to start in the next 6 months to a year. So there's a lot of clinical studies going on, which is really so encouraging for us. We're going to have expanded use of the global registry. You'll see us pushing for you very soon to go back in if you already have a record and update your record. If you haven't registered for the global registry, we will be encouraging you. That's one of our strongest tools as a community to advance the clinical research. FPWR is going to continue engaging in the rare disease community and leading the way as an advocacy group. We'll have some additional webinars this year on the caregiver burden in PWS, the directed research programs, the registry, so keep your eyes out for that. And we hope to see you in Indianapolis this August for the FPWR annual family conference, which we're really looking forward to. I'd like to end with this is a list of the clinical trials that are ongoing or are planned for coming up. That's just kind of for your record to keep an eye on all of those, and we'll let you know as results come out or additional studies start. So sign up for our clinical trials alert and we'll keep you up to date on that. So finally, thank you. None of this would be possible without our supporters and those of you who work so hard to, bring financial stability to PWS and allow us to go out and find the best research that we can to help our kids. I encourage you to stay up to date, visit our website for the funded projects. We also, as outcomes come out, as papers come out, we put that on our website. You can sign up for our blog to keep up with the outcomes as they come out, and check out the 5-year plan, as I mentioned. And thank you again to all of you who support us as individuals and all of the organizations that support our research program. And so that is all I have for today. Susan, I don't know if we have any questions. Please feel free.